Morning, everyone. Give it a couple of minutes just to let a couple of people filter in through, and then we'll look to get started probably about 2 or 3 minutes past 10. Fantastic. So what we'll do, we'll start now, and then I'm sure people will filter in as we continue. And as you'll see in a minute, all of this will be sent out following the webinar anyway. So anyone that's a little bit late can hop on later and review the entire thing. So first of all, thank you everyone for taking the time to come and speak with us today. Really great to have lots of new people here. Really great to be able to share with you some of the great work that Microsoft and some of our other partners are doing with AI and analytics in the non-profit and charity space. So the webinar's topic today is going to be leveraging AI and analytics for fundraising success. So my name is Ben. I'm from Riven Associates. I'm here today with Chris and Scott, who will introduce themselves shortly. And I'll just go through some of the sort of housekeeping bits just at the beginning first. So everyone's going to be muted and cameras off the entire time. Doesn't mean you can't ask questions. Please feel free to put anything in the chat during the webinar at any time, and then near the end we'll come back and answer any questions that pop up. Like I mentioned, it's all going to be sent out and emailed to all of the attendees and registered parties at the end anyway. So if at any point you watch the webinar and you don't think of your question immediately, and you get 10 minutes, a day, a week later, and you think, oh, actually, I really wish I'd asked something about this, or how does this apply to me specifically in my very niche business scenario, feel free to reach out. You can call me, you can email me. I'm sure Chris and Scott happy for you to find them and message them about things as well. So the agenda today, very quick introduction from me about who Riven Associates are, what we do, and then I'll be passing over to Chris. Chris will go through some of Microsoft's fantastic work that they're doing in the tech social impact space, at which point Scott will take over and have the sort of main meat of our webinar going through Scott as well, with some closing comments and time for questions right at the end as well. So there's me. I'm a sales manager for Riven Associates. So Riven Associates are a managed service provider. We're based in Camberley in Surrey, but we support partners all across the UK and actually some across the globe as well. Been going for about 21 years now. And we do a breadth of IT related and advisory consulting pieces. So whether it's expertise questions that you want, whether you just want someone to speak to and ask questions about what's going on with regards to your IT, or whether you want someone to come in and help actually have a look at what's going on and advise you of best practice, or if you just want someone to take over the whole thing, we can do everything in between for you. And a lot of that is thanks to the great partners that we've got, both with Arrow and with Microsoft that we've got today. By all means, check us out on the website. Find me specifically on LinkedIn. You saw my email on the previous slide as well. So feel free to send me a direct email, call me. There's lots of ways that you can get in contact. I'd love to speak to any and everyone, especially in the non-profit space. Really something that I personally am passionate about, and something that we'd love to be able to help with. So enough about me. I'd love to now pass over to Chris, and Chris can introduce himself from Microsoft.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you very much. So thank you for that introduction, Ben, and thank you for Riven Associates for putting this on. We do appreciate all the work that you're doing. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes today just talking about what I do and what we do at Microsoft in Tech for Social Impact to help the non-profit organisations around the world. First, I want to say I've got one of the best jobs in the world, Microsoft, honestly. I absolutely love it. The reason being that I spend every day working with partners such as Riven Associates that serve this sector. I get to hear all the amazing things that you do as non-profits, and I work with organisations in the UK right through to Australia and New Zealand. And just remember that what gets me out of bed every morning is nobody ever donates money to your charity and says, I really want this to go on Microsoft licenses. We want it to go on what you're trying to do, what mission you're trying to achieve, whether that be saving dolphins or cleaning up beaches or helping cure cancer. But first, I just want to tell you really what Microsoft are doing. But before that, I just want to start with a quick personal story. So Ben, if you want to go to the next slide for me. I don't just put this slide up because it makes me look a lot younger and thinner. It was before children, promise you. But 10 years ago, we actually had the chance, me and a couple of my colleagues, to climb Kilimanjaro. And that was 10 years ago now. And 10 years ago, just before 10 years ago, there was a new shiny device out on the market called the iPad. And in my previous role, I had my hands on this revolutionary new piece of kit. We showed the iPad off to the children of Tanzania. And you can see from the picture in the bottom right-hand corner, the joy that it brought to them. Their favourite application was the camera. Now, if you think back 10 years ago and how much technology has moved on, how the organisations that are on this call have kind of survived that pandemic and come out the other side, hopefully in a positive light. And then you look to the next 10 years and where we're going to potentially be with AI and the buzzword that it is at the moment, and them advancements that are really going to come. It's going to be unbelievable, and it's a time to kind of ride that wave. I'll always say as well, technology has kind of helped me during the pandemic in a couple of personal ways. So my daughter, who is now 8, she was in reception at school when COVID hit, and technology taught her to read. We look at medical advancements, and my son was actually diagnosed as needing his tonsils out during COVID as well. So although that's not a major medical issue, it was diagnosed remotely via technology. So technology's helped me personally, and I'm sure it will have helped all of you organisations on this call. Just want to talk now, move to the next slide, Ben, about our commitment to this sector. So we believe at Microsoft that this sector is critical to how we achieve this overarching mission. And we see this every day in our work. We see technology empowering people and organisations, whether it is data and AI helping predict malaria outbreaks, or humanitarian organisations delivering digital literacy to displaced people. I just talked about our journey to Tanzania there. So in sub-Saharan Africa, at the moment, 90% of 10-year-olds still can't read. So they're still learning to read, not reading to learn. And again, we think that technology and Microsoft have got a place to play there. But we believe that success of this sector, the non-profit sector, is critical to how we achieve this mission. But to do that, we must make this technology accessible. So we need you to be able to actually get it. We need to make it affordable. So we don't want you to be charging you the full price because, as I say, no one donates their money to be able to just to go on Microsoft licenses. But most of all, we want to make it really relevant for you as non-profits. So we don't just want to give you the same technology that we give to other organisations and let you deal with it. And that's where our partners come in to really help you nurture the technology that we give them to meet your needs. And we are a customer-first, partner-led company. We always have been, we always will be. We start with the needs of our customers, and we work with our partners such as Riven to deliver the best outcomes for you as your each organisation. Okay, next slide, please. So as we look as the past few years and as we've come out of the pandemic, we see this digital divide and opportunity continuing to grow. A lot of people are left behind. I mentioned Tanzania earlier on, and them sub-Saharan children that are still struggling with that literacy. We look at the fundamental rights issues. We see unlawful wars unfolding every single day now. We see people in Ukraine and they're being violated, and it's across the world now, as we know. Again, we think that tech has got a role to play. We've got an urgent climate crisis. A couple of years ago now, we had the hottest summer we've ever had, if you can remember that, believe it or not, in the UK. And a few months later, it was snowing. And that's not normal. There's a role for tech to hopefully play in that. But finally, and this is why we're here doing these kind of webinars and in-person events. I'm actually in the office in Manchester with some non-profits today. There's this diminishing trust in big tech. There's questions about our motivations and why we do these things. And it's critical that we apply technology and innovations to this to address these challenges. But we need to keep our core values, such as trust and privacy, transparency and inclusion. Next slide, please, Ben. So what is tech for social impact? We needed to evolve and think a little bit differently about what we're doing as a business model and supporting you and societal changes that serve this purpose and the non-profit organisations. So back in 2017, Microsoft Philanthropies brought together its efforts with commercial sales to create TSI, Tech for Social Impact. And our aim is to empower every non-profit and humanitarian organisation to accelerate social good. And what we do is we combine our grants, so our free licenses, with our commercial engagement into this one single team. So everyone in Tech for Social Impact only supports non-profits. And we want to deliver solutions with our partners to empower social breakthroughs and help accelerate the efforts of our philanthropies team with our efforts and our partners' efforts to help you guys drive your missions. So we don't just provide grants, we don't just provide free licenses, and this is the bit I love about this slide, is the bottom left-hand corner. We have a social investment model. So every single dollar that we make above and beyond our costs, we reinvest into the sector. So we give free software, as I mentioned, to 10 organisations with 10 or fewer employees, which actually is about 80% of the world's 4 million non-profit organisations. We offer huge discounts on most of our SKUs across all of our workloads, and I'm sure that guys can go into that a little bit further, and I've got a slide that shares that in a sec. But most importantly, we want you to be able to use this technology. So we offer free digital skills training. For example, we reached nearly 30 million learners last year with our Global Skills Initiative. So what do these numbers equate to? Next slide, please, Ben. There's some big numbers on here, and I'll just talk you through them. I'm going to start bottom up. So at the moment, we serve around 325,000 non-profits globally. Now that sounds like a big number, and there's only around 200 people in our team, so there's a lot of non-profits to serve between us. However, that's scratching the surface of how many non-profits there are globally. I say there's about 4 million that could benefit from our discounts. So if you're on this call and you don't get non-profit pricing at the moment, reach out to Ben, reach out to the guys at Riven, and they will, with Arrow's help you make sure you're on the right licensing. This is in our DNA. This is in Microsoft's DNA. You see, with our giving campaign, we donated over $240 million last year just by Microsoft employees. But most importantly, I talked about this social investment model. Last year, we gave $3.8 billion back in grants and discounted software and services. $3.8 billion, that's a big old number. If there's any finance people on the call, if that's got a lot of zeros when written down, to put that in perspective for me as a non-finance person, we take that and look how big we would be or where we would rank if we were a country. So we would be number 12 in the world if we're an aid-giving country, which is pretty significant, but we want to grow. We want to double. We want to double the amount of non-profits we serve, which in turn means we'll be able to give more and more money back into the sector. And everything we do is driven by this deep sense of purpose. And that's what you expect from us as our customers and our partners in this fast-changing society. So if you click onto the next slide for me, Ben, this is just it's a very busy kind of offers slide. As Ben said, the slides will be shared, so don't worry about remembering all this. It's not going to be a test at the end. These are some of our highlight offers that we offer. I talked about the free users, 10 business premium licenses. If you've not got that, go and get them. It's going to save your organization some money, and business premium is our kind of hero SKU that can do a lot of the things that you will need to do to keep your business running. We do have Azure infrastructure grants, so that's up to $2,000 per year that we can give. That's US dollars that we can give you, and then also we have some grants and things with Power Platform. I'm not going to dive too much into this at the moment, and as I say, this will be shared. So next slide, please, Ben. I just want to touch briefly on AI, because it wouldn't be a Microsoft presentation at the moment if we don't talk about AI. I know that Scott's going to really delve into this after I've finished, but I think we're at a real unique moment in time at the moment that's been made possible in this large part by digitization of organizations. Now, whether that was forced in 2020, when overnight people had to just go digital, and people are still picking up the pieces. But entire industries are changing and are transforming, and none more so, I think, than the non-profit sector. We have this macroeconomic environment that's shifting, and the non-profit sector is finding it hard to recruit and finding it hard to retain talent. And we are really at this technological inflection point. Next slide, please, Ben. We've not experienced diffusion at scale in the tech industry before. I don't know if you've seen this chart before, but it's one that kind of makes my mind blow every time I see it. That we don't see this growth of AI as a gentle slope. It's a vertical line. And you can see here that ChatGPT took just 3 months to get to 100 million users. You can compare that to Facebook or the internet, even at 7 years. So it's here to stay, and it's about embracing that now. Next slide, please, Ben. So this is just, we're new, right? Everything's new to us, and this is very much a slide that is live. This was some of the use cases that I've heard when I've been out on my travels, speaking to non-profits across the globe of all different sizes. And I was really trying to break this slide down into 4 key areas of where we see AI really making an impact. As I say, this is evolving. I'm sure when I go into the meeting later on today in Manchester, this slide will change, because the non-profit I'm meeting are a small caregiving charity that will come up with some more ideas. And that's what we're about. It's about sharing and about creating this community between non-profits to help serve your purposes. And before I hand over to Scott, I just want to put a really important question up when we asked some of our Copilot users. If you just click to the next slide, please, Ben, sorry. That is Copilot worth more than a free lunch? Oh, I think the format is just off on that slide. So is Copilot worth more than a free lunch? And actually, 80% of people chose Copilot over a free lunch. And I'm sure Scott's going to go into the advantages of Copilot and what it can give you. But one thing I just want to double click on here is 30% of people, when surveyed, actually said it would influence their choice of employer. Now, I just touched on it briefly before, that this sector is always, and I hear it every time I talk to non-profits, they really struggle to recruit and they really struggle to retain. So the fact that when surveyed, 30% of people said it would influence their choice of employer is really important about giving your members of staff the right tools to go and do their job. Okay, so finally, Scott, if you just, Ben, sorry, flick to the last slide. So before I hand over to Scott and you can hear more about Copilot, I just want to sum up what is our role as Microsoft in a business in a modern day. So there was a renowned economist called Milton Friedman who said the role of a company is to serve its shareholders and that greed is good. But the definition has evolved, because it turns out, that companies don't operate in some parallel universe or some vacuum outside of the planet. We're affected by the world around us, whether that be global warming or poverty, or our next market in Africa that we're looking at the moment. Billions of people in this world are affected. So the new definition of what a company needs to do, and it's every company, came from the Business Roundtable, which is 181 CEOs to come together. And the role of a company is not just to serve its shareholders, the role of a company is to serve its stakeholders. And our stakeholders at Microsoft are employees like me, and they're our partners, such as Riven Associates and Arrow. But most importantly, it's you guys that are on this call. It's our customers and the communities that you can serve. So quite simply, our philosophy at Microsoft is simple. Companies that can do more should do more. And we are. And with that, I'll hand over to Scott to take you through Copilot and the wonders that hopefully it will bring to your nonprofit.
Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen quickly. Let me know if you can see that on your side.
Yeah, that's come up now, Scott.
Perfect. Yeah, guys, so my name's Scott Brunton. I'm a solutions engineer here at Arrow. We work with Riven and other partners to support in sessions like this one. What I'm going to go through for you guys is very high-level introduction to what is Copilot. There's a lot of discussions about what is AI, what are the example use cases, what can I do with it ultimately, that I think is causing a lot of confusion. So I want to clarify what it is, what can you do with it, and give you some good examples for you guys so that you can actually begin looking at Copilot and start identifying what are those use cases for you where it can add value to your organization. So to start off with, I'll summarize what is Copilot. The best way to describe it is your AI assistant at work. It's there to support you, to make you a Copilot enhanced user. It's not there to replace people. That's not the intent of the solution. It's there to make that Copilot enhanced user more valuable for your organization ultimately. It does this by its components. So at a high level, what are the major components? The first is the large language model. That is the AI, the service that we're asking our questions to and getting our responses from. Next is the Microsoft Graph. This is what makes this version of Copilot and this AI effectively more distinct from other versions like ChatGPT or other versions of Copilot. It has access to your data as an individual in Microsoft 365. It's your information stored in SharePoint Online, documents in OneDrive, things that you've been shared through email, Teams chats. If it's in Microsoft 365, you can access it with Copilot if you have access. The next is the integration natively into the Microsoft 365 apps. So you would see or may have seen at this point options for Copilot in Microsoft Teams, like this team meeting right now, in PowerPoint, in Excel, in Word, in the Teams application, and a few other different places. The reason for that is so we can use Copilot natively within the context of whatever we're doing. So if I'm creating an email, I can open Copilot, ask it to summarize the email I'm on right now, or insert my email paragraph draft into that email that I'm creating, or to revise a slide on a PowerPoint deck that I'm currently working on, so it knows what I'm doing right now effectively. Next is able to reach out to the internet to find publicly available information as well. So if there's something you don't know or something your organization doesn't have stored that you have access to, then we can reach out to the internet and find that information as well. This is all wrapped around the idea of natural language. So if any of you have used ChatGPT or seen people using it, it's much more distinct than I think people are familiar with using things like Google, like a search engine essentially. Copilot is not a search engine. It is essentially it's another person. It's the best way to describe it. It's you're having a natural conversation. It understands the context. It's very intuitive, and it learns with you over time as well. So it will learn to respond in ways that it thinks you want rather than giving you more generic answers. So it will slowly tune to how you work as well as an individual over time. In this deck, I've got a few example videos as well of some end users using Copilot in different scenarios. So in this example, I've got Copilot in PowerPoint. So we'll see how a user can quickly find documents in Microsoft 365 with Copilot they have access to, and then they can create content based on that document. So in this example, I believe they've been sent a proposal around some sustainability project. They're able to reference the document and say, Copilot, create me a PowerPoint based on this proposal. Copilot goes ahead, reads the document, and creates the content. It uses draft templates. There's thousands now available in PowerPoint from Microsoft. It uses copyright-free images. There are millions of those available through Microsoft or online. And it doesn't just, regurgitate the content verbatim. It understands and interprets what's in that document being referenced and creates content around that. So I'll show you what that looks like now. Perfect. So it's a very nice video there, and some things I'd like to draw attention to. First off, we see that native integration is the application here. So we open PowerPoint, and you'll have the option to open Copilot within the application. So we can ask it things like add animations to this slide, a very contextual question, and it understands what we're doing. It remembers the history of the conversation from beforehand, and also it gives us nice hints as well on things to do next, like include more text, change the images, not very good ones here, for example, but it'll tell you things like, would you like to add animation to this slide, or would you like to re-edit this slide? Something I'd like to call attention to as well is it's a tool for drafting content like this. It's never a final product. There might be problems in the way things are presented or the way it's interpreted things, but it's really good at creating first drafts, getting you 80% of the way there. If any of you spent any time creating PowerPoint decks, it'll take me an hour probably to make half as many slides to this content, never mind 6 slides. So I'm already, 80% of the way there when creating content. The next considerations around security and compliance. So Copilot will inherit an organization's security, compliance, and privacy policies. So there are no specific Copilot compliance and security policies that you can configure. Rather, it will inherit those that already exist in your organization's Microsoft 365 admin center. For example, if you've implemented data governance through Microsoft Purview with tools like data loss prevention, information protection, Copilot will inherit and respect those. When you license a user with Copilot, Copilot has access to what that user has access to, not to the organization's set of information. So it's really important we look at the user's permissions rather than what Copilot has access to per se. Microsoft have also committed to the principles of responsible AI. So this is all around safe and fair use of AI in business, with commitments to things like safety, security of data, privacy of information, etc. The next example I'll show you is Copilot in Excel. This will show you how Copilot can very quickly save you time. You don't need to be an expert in Excel anymore. You don't even need to know functions and formulas anymore. If you have a Copilot license, you can ask it to do those things for you, and it can even graph it out for you and create all of that content, do all that analysis for you. You don't need to be an expert. Perfect. So that's great for someone who's maybe not an expert in Excel, but even for people who have a lot of knowledge and experience in Excel, they can benefit from this with a lot of repetitive tasks. They can use Copilot to very quickly automate those tasks and do it for them, or to do more advanced things, as it's mentioned here, and bring in machine learning models or use more advanced functions that they weren't comfortable with using beforehand with Copilot. Copilot, the question I get quite often is around, is it secure and is my data safe, which is going to be a massive concern, particularly for the non-for-profits. What I would like to reinforce is that your data is secure with Copilot. Microsoft have committed to not using customers' data to train the underlying large language model. This was a particular concern, and still is in many organizations, with unauthorized AI usage, where because it is such a good service using generative AIs, people are using things like ChatGPT, the free version in particular, which is the problem, where the information you put into that service Obviously, it's great you get your feedback, you're getting your responses, but the service is adding or training the model on that input data. So people are putting sensitive business data, taking spreadsheets of HR information, other kinds of sensitive information, inputting it into the model for some kind of analysis, and ultimately that data is then outside of the organization's boundary of control. I can go back to ChatGPT and query it in a certain way to get this sensitive information. And you might have seen some news stories about this in the last few months. It is a big problem, and that's not something that's going to happen with Copilot. You're effectively accessing an isolated version or logically isolated version of an AI model. Nothing that you input into it is training that AI model. Also, I've had this question a couple of times around intellectual property. Copilot and Microsoft will never claim intellectual property on any content that's been created using Copilot. So if you create content that's used for business purposes or charitable purposes, for whatever reason, you will always have the intellectual property of that content, and there won't be any conflicts down the line of Microsoft saying, oh, you've used us to create this content, we want 50% of the revenues. There's not going to be any conflicts like that. You will retain the intellectual property of that data. Final video for you guys. This one will show you the capabilities in Microsoft Teams. So very different to what we've seen so far. This is more focused on collaboration using a lot of the summarization capabilities of Copilot, which arguably are some of the best capabilities. We can use Copilot in live meetings like this one, or in meetings that we can't attend, to very quickly summarize what's been discussed so far, or to get AI-powered summaries at the end of meetings on the key information that we need to know, tasks for individuals, and we can go back and query it as well and get that information that maybe wasn't initially put in the the draft outline, like for more information effectively. Perfect. So it's really showing you there how we can very quickly save time. I've seen a whole bunch of different examples of what people are doing with this in Teams. I had one partner, they had a large webinar with a whole bunch of customers. I think it was 100 plus end users on the call, and they wanted to get some feedback at the end of the session. They asked everyone to put in, a question or some feedback at the end of the session, and they had 100 different messages. So it's very hard to actually decipher the key themes across that. They asked Copilot to summarize all of those different questions from the customers into the key questions so that they could very quickly address it in that meeting, rather than going to have someone sit down and read through every single question one at a time. I've seen a whole bunch of other different use cases like that as well. One thing I want to point attention to as well is, hopefully you can see my mouse, is these little citations here that Microsoft calls them. They're references. Whenever Copilot generates content, it will always show you where it's referencing that source information. So in this case, it's a specific time point in the meeting. If I was to click on the reference, it would go back in the recording and tell me, or I can watch what they're referencing. If I'm creating a document, it will reference, maybe it's a Word document, maybe it's a PDF, maybe it's something on the internet. It will always tell me where it's getting its information from so that I can always trace that and ensure that it's correct. Because it could be, if referencing the wrong document, or the document's outdated, or it's just not what we're looking for potentially. So we know where is it getting that information from. The next thing I'll point out is when you do get Copilot licenses, for many people, the next step is, what do I do now? Because there are so many things you can do with it. I've shown you some very limited examples, if I'm honest, because there are so many things you can do with it. What I've gotten here for you is top 10 things to try as soon as you get the Copilot license. So these will immediately start saving you time individually and adding value for you. I mean, how much time are you going to save alone summarizing emails and drafting emails with Copilot? It's a massive time saver in that regards alone. So, I mean, it takes a screenshot, do whatever you need to do. We can always share this with you afterwards, but these are the top 10 things I'd recommend you start using with Copilot as soon as you get a license. After that, once you've gotten to grips with the basics of Copilot, asking questions, creating content, that's when we start looking at how we can start using Copilot in more advanced ways. So there is a structure that we've been given that follows a process called GCSE, or Goal, Context, Source, Expectations. So we saw beforehand very simple questions, create me a PowerPoint based on X, or summarize this email chain. We can ask Copilot to do much more complicated things than I think people realize. And it's all about asking or prompting it in a more effective way. So learning how to create effective prompts, how to do more complex tasks, you'll get more value out of Copilot. In this example, they asked Copilot to generate 3 to 5 bullet points. So that's the goal, to prepare me for a meeting with a client to discuss some phase of a brand campaign. So we have the context, or the why. We have the source. So where does Copilot want to look? By default, it will look at everywhere. We can specify it to emails and Teams chats in a specific time period as well. And then we have some expectations on what we want that actual content to look like. So here it's still saying, please use simple language so I can get it up to speed quickly. If it's a technical document referencing, we don't want all of the technical jargon. We just want it simplistically broke down. So this is a very complicated, not so complicated, very advanced prompt that can give you some very advanced results as well. What are the essentials for success? It comes down into 3 major categories. The first is nominating your Copilot sponsors. In a simple way, who are your champions of Copilot in your organization? We wouldn't expect you to roll out Copilot to everyone day one. We would expect test users, test groups in your organization to trial Copilot to understand, what is it? What can I do with it? What are my capabilities? They become your champions in your organization. They can support with the wider rollout to users. If people have questions about how do I use Copilot to do X, those are the people they go to. They are your knowledge workers in effect. Next is identifying those high value target scenarios where Copilot's going to add the most value, because those are the users we want to be targeting with Copilot as soon as possible. Those people that are constantly creating content in PowerPoint or whatever it might be, that is taking up X amount of time in their day just by using Copilot, they're already saving time. Those are the use cases we don't want to be immediately targeting, and then branching out from that point onwards for that user, or for other users, identifying use cases over time, because it's something that is developing. They're constantly adding new capabilities into Copilot. And then finally is defining your path to secure your data to ensure data compliance. So Copilot is based on a user's files permission. Therefore, it's important to have a data strategy based around users' access to documents, and to be aware of what users have access to and what they shouldn't have access to, and what we're going to do to protect that data. That's where Riven can come in and support you guys with assessments, and with identifying those high value targets, and with supporting you with the actual data governance piece as well. My last slide I've got, or a couple of slides, is just some quick examples of benefits specifically for non-profits. So I've pulled these across some of the example use cases we've got so far. and I'll go into a little bit more detail in the next slide. So we've got examples for improving fundraising efforts with Microsoft 365 Copilot. So we have contextual assistance. We saw how it's very contextual, the service. Copilot can give you more context-aware suggestions and support when you're creating documents, creating content in support of your fundraising efforts. It can support your employees with learning and development. So if you have new users, particularly, onboarding them is always a difficult experience. Copilot can support you with creating onboarding documentation and content, but also support with the actual understanding of the organizational information. Copilot can help break down, summarize documents for users so they're better able to understand the information. And also Copilot can support with documentation. So it can support in creating documents and editing documents in Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, so that you can use them as part of your fundraising material or marketing material. We have improving communication with donors or improving communication with people internally as well. So email drafting, we didn't see that use case example, but we can draft emails in Outlook using Copilot. We can ask it to use complex or simplistic language. We can give it a tone. So is it going to be more marketing focused? Is it going to be more charitable focused? It will edit the semantics of the way it's formatted. We can use Copilot for meeting organization. It'll look at your calendar and help you identify timings and also scheduling for Teams meetings. And we can use it in meetings as well, as we saw in that example. And we can use it for task management as well. So if we're in a meeting at the end, it'll give us a recap. Scott, you need to deliver this project by Thursday. I can have that, and it will be a task I can assign to a user or to myself, or it'll help you identify tasks as well. If I was to ask Copilot, what are my outstanding tasks? It won't just look at my planner. It will look at questions people have put to me in Teams chats or emails and pick those tasks up and remind me of them as well. And finally, we have improving productivity and efficiency. So we can do a whole bunch of time savings with Copilot. We have things like data analysis in Excel. We have code generation. Now, this is not Copilot for GitHub. I'll make that clear, but we can ask it to do things like create me basic scripts. If you have any IT admins that are running constantly running the same script over and over again, I've done it earlier. I asked it to create me a basic script to list all of my users in Entra in PowerShell. It can do things like that because it can reach out to the internet. We have cost savings by automating all of these tasks and improving time efficiency. Copilot, just by the nature of using Copilot, is going to have a return on investment anyway, never mind all of the actual value add of the content that's been created. And then security advice. So it won't go ahead and implement changes, but you can ask Copilot, what are Microsoft's best practices around data governance or around identity security? And it can give you summarizations of Microsoft documentation for you so that you, maybe you're an IT admin, can start implementing best practice around different security approaches. And that's everything from me. So I think it's over to Ben now, who has finishing slides for you guys.
Scott, yeah, absolutely. Let me just grab those up and then we can finish those and get onto the Q&A as well. So let me just share my screen. And just let me know when that pops up.
Can't see anything yet.
Should be on its way. It's typically slow. Here we go. And then let me just skip to the end. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. So firstly, thanks a lot, Scott and Chris, for taking the time to help us today. Really great to have such fantastic partners for us and to be able to go through some of the sort of key benefits of AI and where it can help specifically with fundraising. I think I'd just like to point out at this point, there's a huge amount that we've covered here. So Scott and Chris have sort of scratched the surface between them about Microsoft's offering and Copilot in particular. there's a huge amount of information around Copilot and what it can do. And I think setting the stage for the foundational blocks of setting Copilot up within your charity to make it a success is a really key piece. And in particular with some of the fundraising points and how it works with those fundraising. I know Scott went through quite a lot of those at the end there. But Copilot is so versatile and so flexible to be able to do what you need it to do, that once you set it up in a space that is appropriate, has the security considerations in there, it's assigned to the appropriate users for the best licensing and the highest value use cases, its value starts to become almost compounding. So it will gradually get better, it will be more easily queried, and it will learn how your data and how your business and charity is working. Now that can also feel slightly overwhelming, right? There's a lot of amazing things that AI can do, and a large part of this was understanding how and where that sits within the estate and why there are so many considerations you need prior to just grabbing a Copilot license and just putting it into your tenant and running with it. Part of what we do at Riven is help you understand where that best fits in your business, and to make sure that you're ready for it, and we can go in and we can set things up and get things ready and understand exactly how your charity could use Copilot and do an in-depth look at where and how it could be deployed. And as part of that, we're offering a completely free review at the moment. So you'd get half an hour, whether it be with me or one of my technical team, and we can go through your entire Microsoft estate. So what you have now, what you'd like it to do, how secure it is, what measures you have in place currently. It is tailored towards AI and how that can help your charity, really grow and expand and fundraise and support the members that it supports. But it can be flexible, so we can do it for your entire IT estate. So whatever it is that you guys need, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Again, you can use LinkedIn, you can call me, you can send me an email through the email on there. Any and all of those are absolutely fine. Just please get in contact and take advantage of the expertise that we have and the partners that we work with, so that we can apply them to your business at no cost to you. And of course, we've got another one coming up. So our next webinar is sort of just driving sustainability and growth. So this one's going to be slightly more geared around the Microsoft 365 licensing and the Azure-based offering from Microsoft and how that applies to nonprofits. So that's going to be next month, just under a month now. And there's a sign-up link there as well. So if anyone would like to sign up for that, please do so. Or if you have questions in the meantime, please let us know as well. And there's some of the contact information just for us as well. So that's us coming to the end of the webinar. I can see there's one question in the Q&A. So probably more geared towards how AI and Copilot can really help with fundraising success very specifically. Hopefully some of that was answered with Scott's final few slides. Appreciate that there's a huge amount, like I said, foundational building blocks for Copilot and how you have to set up your charity for success with Copilot. Scott, I don't know if there's anything else that you would add to the slides you already had, whether there's any particular case studies or anything like that. I know that we've had a couple of the charities that we work with now that have used Copilot prior. They find it really helpful for marketing and for reaching out with fundraising. It's a lot of the content creation tasks and how that can help be more efficient, more easily accessible, and also fine-tuned to very specific donor targets, right? So if it's high net worth individuals, you can ask Copilot to build you a presentation that has that specific demographic with some of those more advanced prompts as well. So Scott, I don't know if there's anything that you'd add to how that looks or how that works, or Chris equally.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, really. It's about how you use it for all those time savings, which is the return on investment to begin with, and then how you utilize Copilot for creating content, on summarizing content. What I'll do is I'll have a quick look at some of the case studies that have been produced so far. I believe some have been created specifically for not-for-profits, but I think a lot of the business ones also show you that value add, because whilst it's obviously business specific content they're creating, it can be related back to a not-for-profit type scenario where you're creating content for specific use cases or for specific reasons. So I'll have a quick look and share that content with you.
Sick, thank you. In which case, if there's no other questions, and Richard, I hope that answered yours. If not, again, feel free to reach out to me afterwards, and we can have a conversation about exactly how it would work within your charity. Failing that, no more questions. It was fantastic to have you all here. Thank you very much, Chris and Scott, for coming on and taking the time to be with us. If there's any other questions, Matt, I saw your hand flew up then. You can either pop a question in the chat, or you can just reach out to any of us directly as well, and we can answer those. Absolutely no problem for you. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.